You were never meant to hear this. Not here, not now, not like this. They told you history is written by the victors, but they never told you what happens when the defeated don't vanish. They evolve. There's a reason every empire that's ever tried to conquer one landmass has failed in the exact same place, a place that doesn't break. It bends. It doesn't fight to destroy. It survives to transform. And in that survival, it becomes something more dangerous than dominance, undefeatable. This isn't about war or borders or flags. This is about India, and why, no matter how sharp the sword, how deep the agenda, how brutal the method, the West cannot break it. Why does this matter to you? Because if you're living in the illusion of power, you've already lost it. Because if you think domination wins, you've never faced something older than fear itself, a civilization that has stared extinction in the eye and smiled. Listen carefully. This isn't just another motivational speech. This is dangerous knowledge, the kind that doesn't inspire, it alters. Because once you see India for what it truly is, a hydra of consciousness, a mirror to time, a riddle the West can't solve, you won't see countries the same again. You'll start seeing codes. They tried to erase it. They rewrote its textbooks. They colonized its soil, but never its soul. Because India doesn't operate on surface-level strength. It's something else. Every empire that tried to conquer it dissolved. Every ideology forced upon it absorbed, and every manipulation inverted. You're not looking at a nation. You're looking at the last standing civilization. Still think this is just another underdog story? Let me tell you a truth that should never have made it out of dark corridors. India doesn't fight wars with weapons. It fights with time, and time always wins. That's why the West fears. So not because of what India has, but because of what it remembers. Its memory is longer than their history. Its rhythm is older than their revolutions. Its power isn't on display, and it's embedded. This video is not safe. It's not neutral, and it's not polite. Because this is not about peace. This is about presence. The presence of a force the West can't explain, can't stop, and certainly can't predict. So sit back, but don't relax. You're about to discover why India doesn't just survive. It rewrites the rules. Why it isn't playing the same game as the rest of the world. And why by the end of this, you'll question everything you've ever believed about power. History doesn't repeat itself in India. It evolves through echoes. You think of civilization as linear. One rises, one falls, another replaces it. But that's not how India moves. India doesn't follow the line. It bends it, turns it inward, until it becomes a spiral, folding past, present, and future into one breath. While the West was still hunting in forests, India was calculating the orbits of planets. While Europe debated if the Earth was flat, India was mapping the human soul. And while colonizers drew maps with blood and fire, India drew mandalas, charts of inner power they couldn't even begin to decipher. Empires came with swords, cannons, flags. India responded with silence, strategy, stillness. Because it understood something the invaders never could. The most powerful defense isn't resistance, it's absorption. The Persians came, they became a footnote. The Greeks came, they became a whisper. The Mughals came, they became memory. The British came, they became irony. India didn't just survive them. It converted their conquest into culture. But why? Because India isn't a country. It's a mindset, cloaked in contradiction, fueled by chaos, bound by something no outsider can touch. Dharma. This isn't about gods or rituals. Dharma is law without legislation, order without control. It is the spiritual gravity that holds the impossible together. That's why when foreign forces came to divide, India unified. When they came to erase, India remembered. And when they came to rule, India waited. Patience has always been its weapon. Because India knows the truth, empires collapse faster than they rise. India does not forget. It holds the lessons of every invader in its skin, its tongue, its prayers, its silence. It wears scars as blueprints, and its temples aren't monuments, they are codes. Each stone, each chant, each epic, a line of defense that no my seal can reach. This is the knowledge the West never wanted you to understand. Because if you understand how India wins, you'll stop playing their game. You'll realize the strongest nation isn't the one with the most guns. It's the one with the deepest roots. And India's roots? They go so deep, even time gets tangled in them. Keep listening. The descent into truth has only just begun. There's something you weren't told about time. It doesn't flow equally in all places. In India, it collapses. You can walk through a street in Varanasi and feel 3,000 years breathing beside you. You can hear a man chant a hymn that predates most religions. You can see a child coding AI in a slum with the same hands that once carved gods into stone. This is the paradox that terrifies the West, because they don't understand how one place can be ancient and futuristic at the same time. But India does, because it doesn't separate wisdom from evolution. It doesn't treat spirituality and science like enemies. It knows the truth behind the illusion. All progress without presence is just distraction. India didn't rush into the future. It walked with awareness. While the world built glass towers, India built temples into mountains. While others created artificial intelligence, India mastered internal intelligence centuries ago through meditation, breathwork, and silence. You think those are soft tools? They are technologies of the soul. And the soul, once awakened, is undefeatable. That's why India's real power doesn't show up on CNN or in GDP charts. It shows up in stillness, in sacrifice, in a single act of endurance that outlives bullets. When the British came, they brought the rifle. India responded with fasting. When they brought railroads for control, India used them for freedom. India didn't fight war with war. It fought it with will. And here's what they fear the most. Willpower is contagious. It doesn't need a vote or a flag. It just needs one awakened human, and then another. So ask yourself, what happens when 1.4 billion of them carry that same spark? The answer is what you're seeing today. India didn't rise because the world allowed it. It rose because it remembered who it was. And you're beginning to remember too. Do you know what the most dangerous kind of power is? The kind that doesn't announce itself. While you were watching breaking news, India was breaking limits. Not with armies, but with algorithms. Not with invasions, but with innovation. They told you India was poor. They never told you it sent a satellite to Mars for less than the cost of a Hollywood movie. They told you it was chaotic. They never told you it invented one of the world's most sophisticated biometric ID systems, covering over 1 billion people. And they told you India was behind. But they never told you that Google, Microsoft, Adobe, IBM, all of them are run by minds born from Indian soil. Coincidence? No, it's consequence. Because when you compress a civilization under 1,000 years of pressure, you don't destroy it. You forge diamonds of intellect. And now, they are cutting through global systems like a silent laser. India didn't need to scream to rise. It just needed to remember quietly. And now the world depends on it. Not for spirituality, but for survival. Without Indian developers, tech collapses. Without Indian pharmaceuticals, supply chains break. Without Indian diplomacy, the East becomes a minefield. India's value isn't a secret, it's just unspoken. Because once spoken, the game changes. So here's the secret they don't want out. India has already won. It just hasn't declared it. Because in a world where noise is mistaken for strength, India remains silent and indispensable. You think that's humility? No, that's strategy. And the West? They're just now realizing you don't defeat what you didn't even see coming. Now listen carefully, and this is where most people blink, where most people scroll, where most people look away. But not you, because you're waking up. And when awakening begins, comfort dies, because the next truth is the most painful one. The West never wanted India to rise, because India exposes the illusion, an illusion where power means force, where influence means fear, where nations are judged by how loudly they roar. But India whispers, and the world listens. It doesn't dominate, it disorients. Because it plays a different game. One where contradictions aren't problems, they're tools. You see, the West thrives on binaries, good versus evil, us versus them, freedom versus control. But India's entire soul is built on plurality. A temple beside a mosque, beside a church, beside a street food stall with 5 gods in one painting, beef banned in one state, celebrated in another, and no one collapses. This isn't dysfunction. This is design. Because India doesn't seek uniformity. It seeks unity through difference. Try dividing that. Try controlling that. Try defeating that. It won't work. Because how do you destabilize something that thrives in chaos? That's what the West can't process. They think they're seeing noise. What they're actually seeing is resilience in motion. Now, if you've felt the shift, if your eyes are opening, comment the phrase below twice to lock it in. Silent power, ancient code. Silent power, ancient code. You are no longer just a viewer. You're a witness, and that changes everything. Every system of control the West has ever built begins with the same pattern. First, divide, then label, then conquer. It's not always done with weapons. Sometimes it's done with words. Third world, developing underprivileged. These aren't descriptions. They're psychological weapons. And India, it was branded with every single one of them. But they forgot something dangerous. India doesn't internalize labels. It alchemizes them. They called it poor. It turned poverty into innovation. They called it overpopulated. It turned people into power. They called it chaotic. It turned chaos into cohesion. Because when you come from a civilization that has survived invasions, famines, partitions, and propaganda, you don't fear insults. You see them for what they are, attempts to control perception. And perception is the first battlefield. Here's what they didn't expect. While they were shaping opinions, India was shaping infrastructure. Not just roads, but neural roads, highways of thought, systems of software, networks of spiritual strength. The mind of India is decentralized, not controlled by one narrative, which means it can't be toppled by one idea. You take out one leader, another rises. You suppress one philosophy, 3 more emerge. This is a land where contradiction isn't conflict, it's fuel. And that is the ultimate threat to any empire built on binary control. India doesn't obey the rules of the West because it doesn't need them. Its blueprint is older. Its source code, immune to Western edits. When they tried to Westernize it, it adapted. When they tried to demonize it, it absorbed. And now it's doing something even more powerful, transcending. And the world doesn't know how to compete with that, because you can't defeat a nation that's already accepted its wounds and turned them into weapons. Let's talk about the mind, not yours, not mine, but the collective Indian mind, forged over millennia in a crucible of contradiction. You can't explain it in IQ points or academic charts. Because this isn't just intelligence, this is ancestral intelligence. You see it in the kid solving math problems under a streetlight. You see it in the grandmother who knows Ayurveda better than a licensed pharmacist. You see it in the teacher who earns less than a coffee barista, yet holds the future of 60 students in her voice. This is not luck. This is design. India's obsession with knowledge is not a modern strategy. It is a sacred inheritance. From the gurukuls of ancient times to the IIT labs of today, India has always worshipped one thing above all: consciousness. While other nations chased gold, India chased truth. While others fought for land, India fought for wisdom. And now the tide has turned. Because in a world drowning in data, only those who understand depth will survive. India doesn't chase headlines. It builds headspace. This is a country that mapped the cosmos while meditating, invented zero while living in huts, discovered atoms while praying under trees. It wasn't trying to impress the world. It was trying to understand itself. And now, that same internal mastery is being weaponized for modern power. AI, tech, cybernetics. India isn't just participating, it's quietly leading. Because the greatest minds of this century won't be the ones with the most knowledge. They'll be the ones with the deepest mental clarity. And India has been training for that for 5,000 years. Let's talk about the mind, not yours, not mine, but the collective Indian mind, forged over millennia in a crucible of contradiction. You can't explain it in IQ points or academic charts. Because this isn't just intelligence, this is ancestral intelligence. You see it in the kid solving math problems under a streetlight. You see it in the grandmother who knows Ayurveda better than a licensed pharmacist. You see it in the teacher who earns less than a coffee barista, yet holds the future of 60 students in her voice. This is not luck. This is design. India's obsession with knowledge is not a modern strategy. It is a sacred inheritance. From the gurukuls of ancient times to the IIT labs of today, India has always worshipped one thing above all: consciousness. While other nations chased gold, India chased truth. While others fought for land, India fought for wisdom. And now the tide has turned. Because in a world drowning in data, only those who understand depth will survive. India doesn't chase headlines. It builds headspace. This is a country that mapped the cosmos while meditating, invented zero while living in huts, discovered atoms while praying under trees. It wasn't trying to impress the world. It was trying to understand itself. And now, that same internal mastery is being weaponized for modern power. AI, tech, cybernetics. India isn't just participating, it's quietly leading. Because the greatest minds of this century won't be the ones with the most knowledge. They'll be the ones with the deepest mental clarity. And India has been training for that for 5,000 years. Now let's descend deeper into the unspoken strategy. Every nation rises on power, but only civilizations rise on paradox. India is paradox incarnate. It's the poorest and the richest, the loudest and the quietest, the most fragmented and the most united. How is that possible? Because India doesn't function like a Western nation state. It functions like an ecosystem. Try controlling an ecosystem. Try manipulating the monsoon. Try arguing with the Himalayas. That's why attempts to control India always fail. It doesn't resist force. It simply outlasts it. Partition should have broken it. Instead, it gave birth to one of the most ambitious democracies on earth. A democracy that is loud, chaotic, messy, and shockingly stable. Western analysts still don't understand it. How does a nation with over 22 languages, hundreds of dialects, dozens of religions, and infinite ideologies stay together? Because it was never held by politics. It was held by something deeper. Shared memory, shared soul, shared chaos. You think chaos is weakness? In India, chaos is choreography. 1 billion people moving in all directions, yet somehow it works. Because at the root of that noise is order the West can't see. This is the final lesson for those who want to understand why India can't be defeated. You cannot conquer what refuses to collapse. This is where we strip the illusion, not with fire, but with focus. Because the next battlefield isn't land or oil or territory. It's the mind. And in that war, India is already decades ahead. Let me show you something they never taught you in school. Power is no longer about who can fight the longest. It's about who can think the deepest. India isn't winning because of military force. It's winning because of mental endurance. In a world addicted to speed, India's secret weapon is stillness. While the West glorifies hustle, India glorifies presence. While others scream to be heard, India listens until the noise exhausts itself. Then, it speaks. And when it does, the world listens. This isn't strategy. This is civilizational frequency. Why do you think meditation came from here? Why do you think breathwork was born on this soil? Because India's strength was never about doing more. It was about being more. That's what the West never understood. They tried to measure India's success in GDP, stock markets, export charts. But India isn't playing that game. It's playing the game of conscious influence. From Silicon Valley to spiritual retreats, Indian thought has penetrated every layer of modern identity. It doesn't raise armies, it raises awareness. That's why they can't fight it, because India's battlefield is internal. And in that arena, most of the world is unarmed. Let's talk about control. The West mastered it through laws, through borders, through media. It builds systems that regulate the human being, one rule at a time. But India? India flows where control collapses. Try to box it. It spills out. Try to ban it. It evolves. Try to silence it. It sings louder in 1,000 dialects. You can't manage India because India doesn't exist to be managed. It doesn't fear chaos. It feeds from it. This is where most world powers miscalculate. They believe stability comes from order. India proves it comes from harmony, and those are very different things. Harmony allows contradiction. Harmony dances with paradox. Harmony doesn't eliminate tension. It holds it, transforms it, transcends it. That's why no ideology has ever conquered India permanently, because it has no center to collapse. Its core is everywhere. In the priest, the scientist, the farmer, the tech CEO, the barefoot monk. India is not a hierarchy. It's a hologram. Every piece contains the whole. And when you fight a hologram, you lose every time. Because what you're hitting is your own misunderstanding. The modern world is crumbling under the weight of its own lies. They told you progress meant consumption. India knew better. They told you wealth was accumulation. India knew better. They told you happiness came from more. India knew it comes from less. That's why its people can endure suffering. Westerners can't even imagine and still smile. Not because they're naive, because they're rooted in something real. There's a word for it, shraddha, deep faith beyond religion. Not belief in gods, belief in life itself. And that faith has built an armor around India that no military can penetrate. You look at an Indian village and see poverty, but if you could look deeper, you'd see something more terrifying to the Western system: contentment without consumption. A person who needs nothing cannot be manipulated. This is what scares them. Because India is proving to the world that you don't need to become Western to become powerful. You don't need to become loud to become strong. You don't need to sell your soul to buy your freedom. India kept its soul, and now it's buying back its future. One mind at a time. There's a reason every empire eventually turns toward India. It's not the spices, not the tech talent, not the market size. It's the energy. There's something here that cannot be replicated, only experienced. It moves through the air like a current. It draws in seekers, scientists, and strategists. It humbles tyrants. It nourishes wanderers. And that energy is civilizational memory. It's not written in textbooks. It's carved into rhythm, ritual, and remembrance. While the West discards the past to chase the future, India weaves the past into the present and makes it timeless. That's why it doesn't decay. Even when cities crumble, rivers dry, or policies fail, India survives. Because it doesn't live in institutions. It lives in people. In the bedtime story, a grandmother tells her grandchild, in the Sanskrit verse whispered during a wedding, in the smell of turmeric rising from a pot on a firewood stove. That's what they can't conquer. Not because it's hidden, but because it's everywhere. And when power is everywhere, it becomes unshakable. You've made it this far because you already sensed it. The shift, the awakening, the moment where everything starts to make sense. Let me confirm your instinct. India isn't becoming a superpower. It already is one, just not in the way they measure it. It doesn't dominate through bombs. It transforms through presence. It doesn't conquer borders. It dissolves them with ideas, innovation, and influence. It doesn't control the narrative. It simply outlasts every lie until the truth becomes unavoidable. That's why the West can't defeat it, because they don't know where to aim. You can't bomb resilience. You can't sanction memory. You can't outmaneuver a civilization that's already seen your next 10 moves and chosen to wait. India wins because it doesn't react. It remembers. And in remembering, it rises. Not with rage, but with clarity. Now we reach the core. Not the end, but the origin of everything you've just heard. India is not a rising power. It is the return of something ancient, a civilization that never died, only waited. And now it's waking up, not to dominate, but to illuminate. Because the war isn't between nations anymore. It's between truth and illusion, between mechanical minds and living memory, between artificial order and divine chaos. India doesn't pick sides in that war. It transcends it. And if you've listened this far, really listened, then something inside you has shifted too. You're no longer a spectator. You're a descendant of something greater, not because of bloodline, but because of awareness. Comment it again. Silent power, ancient code. Let the algorithm know you are not asleep, because this isn't just a speech, it's an initiation. And once the mind expands, it never shrinks back. You've just remembered who you are. Now move like it, because the world can't defeat what it doesn't understand. And the world does not understand you. Thanks for watching full video.